Hello, hello, and welcome to the Two Guys One Brodo Show. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is David Whitcomb. I'm alongside my tag team partner, Rich Sayer. Hello, Rich.
Welcome, welcome. Good to have you back.
Good to have everybody back. We're sorry for the delay in recordings between the two. Rich had an important family vacation to take, God forbid. So we did have to take a little break from the show, but we think you'll enjoy today's episode. Today's episode is our American League preview episode. Admittedly, a week into the season, a little bit late, but that's, okay for a couple of hobby analysts, as we'd like to refer to ourselves. So we're going to preview each division. We're not going to go record by record, but rather just first through fifth in each division with a little take on each team. We're going to give you our takes for Rookie of the Year, for Cy Young, and for MVP. And we're going to tell you who we think is going to win the pennant, each of us. So, Rich, I typically lead us off, I think. But why don't I toss the ball to you? Why don't you give me your first through fifth for the American League East?
Awesome. Thank you. Like I said, appreciate have everyone back. We had the fantasy baseball. We got a little bit of real baseball going on now. So excited to get into that. I've been, I think, as probably anybody listening to this show, pretty excited for the season to get started. So excited to see the games going on. AL East for me, I think, is actually a really interesting division. I have, I probably, if you're following the sport, it's not going to be any surprise that the Baltimore Orioles are probably going to be projected as the top team in the East. Obviously, a super strong team. So I've got the Orioles, where I think I haven't seen as much chatter about this. And then again, so we are a week into the season now. It would have been great if I was chatting about this a week ago. I'm really high on the Boston Red Sox this season. I have them coming in at number 2. I think they're going to be 88-ish, 90 win type team. Surprise a lot of people. And then, so from there, I got the Rays slotting in right below them. The New York Baseball Yankees, 4th in the division. And then I've got the Blue Jays down at 5. How does that shake out with you, Dave? What are you looking at?
Yeah, that's good. It's an interesting take. So I like, just like you and like probably virtually all prognosticators have the Orioles finishing first in the American League East. They're probably going to finish with the best record in the American League, barring some unforeseen bad luck, injuries, whatever. I've got my New York Yankees. As you guys have seen, I'm a big Yankees fan. I've got my New York Yankees finishing second. I am also high on the Red Sox. I think they're an interesting team. We'll talk about it a little bit more in depth, but I think I have them finishing third, with the Rays 4th, and the Blue Jays, I have them finishing last in the division. I think the Blue Jays, again, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but I think the Blue Jays are going to be surprisingly bad this year. So, so anyway, why don't you talk a little bit about the O's?
Yeah, so Orioles for me, loaded lineup. I think the lineup's only going to get better as the season goes on. Everyone's seeing it right now, but they're currently fielding a competitive major league lineup in their AAA team. So a bunch of those guys we're going to see during the season, replacing some of the players, whoever that may be, that's not performing or falls to injury. So they look great from a lineup perspective. They really need, so I think they could push 100 wins again. That's not really a shock, although I don't see a lot of, maybe models forecasting them for that. But in order to get there, obviously the Burns move was a big one. He's got to be good and healthy, and Grayson Rodriguez got to be good and healthy. Back of the rotation is a little bit of a question right now, but they have enough depth again in AAA or very easily via trade as we get toward the middle of the season. Bullpen also could use a little bit of a reinforcement, but that's an easy move to make as the season goes on. So not a lot, if any, holes for me on this team.
Totally agree. My comment on them was almost too much talent to not win the division. It's hard to see a path where they don't win it. And Norfolk, like you said, the Norfolk Tides really, as we get further into this preview, into some of the bottom feeders in the American League, not rotation-wise, but from a lineup perspective, the Norfolk Tides really could compete with some of these teams from a lineup perspective. It's incredible the amount of talent they have. And like you said, as the season wears on, if they decide they need another starting pitcher, if they decide they need a bullpen piece, really whatever they decide they need, they can go out and get, using some of their prospects to buy some of that, as the capital to buy some of that talent. So, all right, you want to go with your second team, or you want me to go off with my Yankees?
We could go into Yankees next. Why don't you give a Yankees take, and I'll give a comment.
You'll just poop all over it, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, okay, so the Yankees, it's pretty simple. Russell Carlton, and I wanted to find the piece. Maybe you can link to it on the show page or whatever. I'll find it from a few years back at Baseball Prospectus, which, by the way, I'm wearing my BP shirt today, coincidentally.
Shout out to BP.
Yep, shout out to BP, and shout out to my boy Russell Carlton. But anyway, Russell Carlton did a great piece a few years back on a team really only needs 3 or 4 great players to be a really good, if not great team. And the Yankees start off the season with 2, obviously with Judge and Soto. Them finishing second in the division is contingent upon Garrett Cole coming back and making, let's say, 15 to 18 starts this year. That's the third piece. I am admittedly the high man in virtually any room on Anthony Volpe. I think he makes a huge leap forward this year to be a 4.5 to 5 win player. He was a 3.2 win player at Baseball Reference last year. So I think he makes a really big step forward this year. But that alone almost propels you to, 88 to 90 wins. So I think that's where they finish. I think, they finish somewhere in the vicinity of 90-ish wins, and they finish second in the division.
Yeah, no, so we're aligning for the most part. I see them closer to 80 than 90 wins. My, big thing, I totally agree with you on Soto and Judge. I'll mention that as we go a little bit further down in this conversation. I like Volpe as well. Obviously there were seeds there last year, and you could see that really mature very quickly, I think. So that's a great kind of core in the lineup. Just for me, it's all about the rotation, and it's really rough. We don't know what's going to happen with Cole. We're right in the midst of a kind of a shitstorm about everyone going down with arm injuries. I think it's a scenario where you might see something like, not that they're similar in any way, but Andrew Painter last year had the soreness, rested, tried to come back, decides to have the surgery. That's certainly a possibility. I think it could go that way. I think he could pitch. Even if he does pitch, I think he might not be 100%. So if that's the case, then you got Rodon, who hasn't been very reliable, and then you got Cortez, and then you got, we're not even sure.
Stroman.
So I'm sorry, yeah, Stroman. Stroman's pretty solid.
Stroman's fine. Stroman's solid. He's fine.
Yep.
He's just, for the New York Yankees, for him to be your probably second best starter going into the season, or maybe first, actually, maybe even above Rodon. But anyway,
yeah.
All right, lead us into the Red Sox.
So for me, the Red Sox are surging. I think I was kind of surprised. I saw a lot of people in the world of Twitter complaining about, this team's going to be terrible and we're last place in the division, et cetera, et cetera. I really like the core they have right now. The lineup, I think, is going to be average or above. I think there's real breakout potential from Casas this year. Again, I'm going to say that I started taking these notes as the season was starting. I was high on O'Neill, so that's been good so far. I'm very high on Rafael as well, not only defensively, but offensively. So we are a little bit into the season. Was hoping for a little bit of a rebound from Story. It looks like whether the injury lasts or not, that's probably not going to be the case. You want to have Yoshida kind of be a little bit better than a zero WAR player as well. But I think the lineup's very solid. I think the pitching staff is very solid. The big question for me is, at the moment, there's not really a whole lot of depth. They have some pieces that you can move around in the bullpen. I think that's fine. If they have injuries to more than one guy in the rotation, I think the win totals drop a lot. But for me, I have them right now closer to 90 wins than 80.
Interesting. Yeah, I totally agree. They're a speedy team with Rafaela, with Jaron Duran, with even Tyler O'Neill. Was going to be with Trevor Story, but so much for that. He's out for the season, probably. They're a defense team. That's still largely true. I think we talked about this previously with, I don't remember where, but Rafi Devers is probably their only minus defender. And they have solid pitching.
Love that outfield defense.
Have 5 guys. Yep, they have 5 guys who are largely the same guy, right? They have got Garrett Garrett Whitlock and Tanner Howe could knock on my door right now, and I wouldn't know which one's which. So, whatever. So, but all that said, I don't know if they have enough offense, especially amidst the loss of Story, and unless Yoshida has a bounce back season, they feel like a 500 team, but that feels like a success for me amidst the general Red Sox malaise among Red Sox fans. Were going to be terrible, so on and so forth. I feel like they're going to be about a 500 team, but again, I think that's a successful season for them. Go ahead and do your Rays.
So the next team I got the Rays finishing third, and I think this is going to be a really interesting division as we go through the year. I can see the Yankees, Rays, Red Sox moving around a lot in the middle of that division. I think very exciting season this year for those teams. My comment on the Rays, on paper, this should be probably the fourth or fifth team in the division. It just doesn't look that exciting, that interesting. Yep. But Rays are going to Ray, which is not really a saying, and I actually don't really like that format of a saying, but they're just going to outperform that. We've seen that. I'm just counting on that. So that's kind of where that's coming from. They have decent pieces all around. They're going to move them around. They're going to find guys that are on the pitching side of things, and I have them, kind of in the middle of that mix right now.
Yep, that makes total sense. I agree with the 2 through 4 mix largely. Keith Law in his prospect write-up, and I don't remember which guy he was referring to or whatever. It was in the write-up about Ryan Pepio, about the trade for Tyler Glasnow, and he was concerned that that Pepio might catch the Tampa elbow flu. Which I feel like maybe this is the year that Tampa, there's just too much elbow flu going around. They don't seem to have the depth of pitching. You remember the Rays, for years now, they've had like 4 or 5 legitimate major league starters and like 2 or 3 legitimate-ish major league starters at AAA at Durham that they could just call on at any given time. Just doesn't feel like they have the depth of pitching that they have had in years past. And then plus, I'm sorry, elephant in the room, the loss of Wander Franco, like arguably the only superstar, maybe Evan Longoria, in team history. I feel like, they're starting Caballero at shortstop now, who, again, Jose Caballero literally could knock on my door anytime in the next 10 years, and I wouldn't know who he is. So, I think that's just too much to overcome. I feel like they're a 4th place team this year. Yep. I'm going to lead into the Jays, if that's okay.
Go for it.
Man, this team's bad. I just, and maybe we'll see. They've got interesting. So they're the best fantasy 5th place team in the American League, if that makes any sense, right? Like they've got like Bo Bichette, and they got Vladito, although who knows with that. I'll talk a little bit about that guy. They got Kevin Gausman. Although he got blown up in his last start and his velocity was way down, so God forbid he is the next injury pitching victim. Let's hope not. But yeah, I just don't see. They just don't have any pitching. They've got very little pitching depth. Bowden Francis starting the year in the major league rotation, a 28-year-old rookie who really hasn't had any minor league success to speak of. He's fine, but good for him for making the big leagues. And I wonder if Vlad Guerrero Jr. is cooked at 25 years old. I think he is 24, 25 years old. He just, I wrote an article that never got published. That was my mistake. I never sent it to you. But for dynasty rankings for first base, and I kind of faded Vlad in that piece, being that he just has regressed every year. And, we're only 10 games into the season, but thus far he's looking to regress again. And I don't have any good reason for it. He just seems to be losing skill as he gets older.
Yeah, for me, I'm starting to wonder if Vlad Guerrero is like our generation's Eric Hosmer. Hits the ball hard, can't elevate it, can't get it off the ground, and just bounces around for a while and doesn't do what you think he would do based on the raw. Yeah, and
minus all that fuzzy good defense.
Yeah, no, I'm just talking about from the from the batter's box.
Yep.
No,
that's
and then so a lot of weakness for me in the bottom half or more of the lineup. That's a big problem when you don't have standout pitching, and I just think they're going to get bullied by the rest of the teams in this division this year.
Yep.
And I'll say free Davis Schneider.
Free Davis Schneider. There you go. The WB Mason lookalike.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the AL Central. Begging your permission, I'll give my order first since you gave your order first for the
Lead it off.
East. All right, sounds good. So I've got the Royals winning the American League Central, the Guardians finishing second, the Minnesota Twins, which is everybody's darling pick for the Central, finishing third, the Detroit Tigers, much improved Detroit Tigers, I'll say, but still finishing fourth, and the White Sox being, well, we'll get into it more, but being the worst team in baseball is I've got them fifth. So, all right. So why don't you give me your order for the Central, bud?
Yep. So I am going the Twins, like you would think. First of all, I think this is not certainly not much has changed here. This has been a weak division relative to the rest of the American League for quite a while now. I don't see that changing so much. I got the Twins ending up winning the division. I think the Tigers are going to give them a run for their money. I like what the Tigers, where they're at this year. I like the pitching. We'll get into that a little bit. I think the Royals are better than a lot of people think as well. I am down on the Guardians, and I'll rant about that a little bit as a what I call a former Guardians fan. And then, yeah, if you're, I don't know who in there, anybody that's serious that's projecting the White Sox to do anything this year.
Oh, yeah. No, I thought you were going to say if you're a White Sox fan, and I was going to shout out to our friend John Keller, who, we take pity on him. He is a White Sox fan. And they just lost Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez, which were two of the only reasons to even watch the team. So anyway, so all right. So you want to start off with your Twins? What do you want to do?
So yeah, the Twins for me is just the most complete team in the division. I think even with 50-50 health type seasons from Buxton and Royce Lewis, and maybe you can argue 50-50 is generous. I think they're a solid, not spectacular, solid lineup. I think they have a good rotation. I think they have a little bit unsettled in the back end of that, but they have depth in AAA if they need it in a couple different arms. And I think the bullpen's good enough, especially if Duran's back. I think they're a very solid team, not a lot of holes, and I think that's going to hold up over the long season.
That makes sense. All right. So my take on the Twins is this, right? We joke around. We have a WhatsApp chat that we joke around a lot on whatever. And we joked around about Dan Marino for a while, about being the best pure passer of all time. And the running joke was, well, what does that even mean? He doesn't have the best stats. He didn't win any Super Bowls, whatever. So that's the Twins. They're the best pure talent team in the division. But this, for me, feels like a consolidation year for them. I think they're too, like to your point, they're too reliant on the health of Royce Lewis and Byron Buxton, which are major question marks. I mean, Byron Buxton, I literally have a shirt that says Byron Buxton is good at baseball that my ex-wife made for me. He's one of my favorite players in baseball, but I mean, the guy just never has had a healthy season ever. This, for me, feels like a consolidation year for them, where they kind of take a step back, surprising a lot of people. Again, I have them projected to finish third, and then they go out and they dominate the division for the next 5 years after this year. But this year, they take a step back. That's my pick. So who'd you have second?
I got the Tigers, and like I said, I got them giving the Twins a run for their money. Torkelson and Green, I think if they step up to where they can be based on their talent, they could have the Tigers winning this division. I think Parker Meadows is going to be really solid this year. I had him as a sleeper as we were talking about our fantasy teams, but I think a good outfield there. The big question mark in the lineup is Javier Baez, but outside of that, I think you got a lot of strong contributors. I really like the starting rotation. So for me, I think Skubal is really strong. We'll talk about that a little bit. Flaherty is back. I like Mize. I like Olsen. So I think that's a solid group, and I think they even do have a little bit of depth there if they need it. Bullpen's a question mark. Who knows with Foley? It's one of these things where, okay, maybe he's legit all of a sudden, and that's fine, or maybe they need an arm. But I think they're very solid, and they'll be a lot better than they have been in recent years.
Totally agree. So here's the thing, right? They're continuing to piece together a competitive roster, right? They add like 2 or 3 pieces, seeming like for the last 3-4 years, pretty much in the AJ Hinch era, right?
Mhm.
They just add a couple little pieces, nothing major. They haven't gone
Yeah.
out and gotten, whatever, a Mike Trout and Albert Pujols or whatever, but they've gotten, just some pieces. So they're continuing to piece together that competitive roster. But for me, if they're smart this year, I don't know if you remember, this was at least 10 years ago, if not 15, the White Sox were in second place in the division one year and sold. And their
Yeah.
fans went berserk, but they recognized we're
Yeah.
not a contending team this year. We're just having a nice year. That's what I think the Tigers
Right.
should do this year. They're gonna have a nice season. They're gonna sell the
Yep.
Shelby Millers of the team, and they're gonna really put together a real potential winner next year. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. All right, you want to segue? Who you got third again? I'm sorry, I forgot.
I got the Royals.
Okay.
So I see them taking a big
So
jump from where they were last year.
No, I was just
Go
going to say that's wrong.
Yeah. To be determined.
Yep.
So for me, the big thing is they seem to have figured out, whether that was last year or at some point in time, how to get some of these guys to actually pitch. And that's kind of the difference for me. They've been putting together some pieces on the offensive side, some of these kind of cast-offs or not as highly regarded players, and they have a decent lineup, I think, as well. But again, I'm a big Reagan's guy. I think he's going to have a great year, and I think it's a solid lineup. And I don't think people talk about Bobby Witt enough. Certainly fantasy people do, but one of the handful of the most exciting players you can watch. So I think they're moving in the right direction, and I see them taking a big jump from where they were last year.
Totally agree. So again, I have them first. I have them winning the division, and I said they're going to pitch and defense their way into an 86 win season and into John Smoltz's heart. The Royals, absolutely top to bottom. This is easily the best team they fielded since their World Series teams. This is not a World Series team. I don't want to hear about it on Twitter. But I'm saying this is the best team they've had in years. They have an interesting rotation with Reagans, with Brady Singer, with Michael Wacha, with the short name Seth Lugo. So they've got some pieces. They've got some interesting depth at AAA to potentially fill the bullpen. So I don't know. I just feel like this is the team that's going to surprise everybody this year in the American League. I think they're going to win the division. So I think that leaves both of us with just the White Sox, which I'd probably rather have a root canal with no anesthesia than talk about this team.
We didn't chat about the Guardians. You want to?
Oh, with Guardians.
You're
right. You're right. Yep. I'll talk about the Guardians first because I'm the more optimistic. We'll end on the down note, I guess. No, I have them second in the division, even with the Shane Bieber injury. So I have the benefit of having done my rankings, unlike Rich. Rich did his before the Bieber injury, before the Trevor Story injury, like we talked about. Whatever. I think the Bieber loss, I might have had them winning the division, but for the Bieber loss. But it just feels like this team, even with Bieber loss and even with Gavin Williams maybe out for the season, who knows? We'll see what's going on with him. But it just feels like they're going to throw a competitive game out there every year and be in virtually every game and win some and lose some and whatever. They're probably about a 500 team, but it just doesn't feel like they're going to bottom out to me. Like every single game is going to be like 5-3 and they're going to win half of those and lose half of those. So
that's been pretty consistent with what we've seen so far in the first week plus. They certainly surprised me. I'm going to say I've been a Guardians fan, Indians fan for a number of years now. I actually should have maybe thought about that before I started this little chat. But back in the early Manny Tomei days, been following the team, love the team. And I gave that up last year. And, as much as you can go on the record as doing so, that's where I am right here. To me, the current ownership group is just simply not serious about winning or even aggressively competing. If you want to challenge that, go look at the transactions for this offseason. Go look at the transactions during the season last year. It's totally, this is a team that very easily could compete. You want to add a couple of mid-range guys. You could add Tommy Pham today for a couple $1 million. It's just there's nothing to speak of. You could bring up DeLauder if you want to, but they're not going to because they're cheap. They don't want to pay. This is a team that, one of the only teams under $100 million, one of a handful of teams, under, in the $90 million range in payroll when they should be competing for this division. And it's just, embarrassing. They do scout, they do develop fairly well. I think Antonetti does a good job for how he's been, basically have what I would say is a hand tie behind his back. But I am just not at all optimistic on them doing anything during the season, adding pieces to supplement what turned out to be a big problem with Shane Bieber. Who knows what's going to happen with Gavin Williams? There's nothing good that's ready this year to fill in for those guys. So,
so this episode of trashing Cleveland ownership has been brought to you by Two Guys One Roto. No, I totally agree. I mean, you're 100% right on all counts. Actually, the Royals and the Tigers are the perfect yin to their yang. Where the Royals and the Tigers are kind of seeing, hey, this is a winnable division. If we add some, with the Royals, like we go out and add Michael Wacha and Seth Lugo, like who knows what we could do. Exactly. And the Guardians are resting on their laurels. So, all right. Yeah. So let's talk even worse than the Guardians and talk about the White Sox. You go ahead. You start us off since you're on a negative tear right now.
So when I wrote this note, I said you have Luis Robert in the lineup and then a ton of mediocrity or worse, and you just lost Luis Robert. And for me, where the White Sox are at right now is just a product of a poor farm system, poorly run team for years and years. I like, believe it or not, Crochet. I just, who knows what's going to happen as the year goes on. It's really, really hard to say that he's going to start 30 games and be as good as he is right now. Yeah, if there's, I don't know what the money line for that is, but so, and that's it. There's nothing else to talk about. For me, I have this as a 50-win team.
Yeah, this is that's bad. But the although I'm not far off there, but for me, the White Sox are, and we talked about this like a week or two ago, just on the phone or whatever. But the White Sox are interesting in that they are terrible. I mean, this roster is an abomination. That's what I wrote, right? Yeah. But they're not like Houston Astros, Chicago Cubs, Baltimore Orioles, like tearing it down to the studs on purpose. Terrible. Right. This is the team they put together on purpose, and they're this bad, right? And so when I was doing the standings, I actually printed out a sheet with the standings, like an actual piece of paper because I'm 100 years old, and I was genuinely surprised that they had a win. That's how bad I think this team is. So I really think, I guess I agree. I think they could lose 110 games, which regression almost always prevents that, like gravity almost always. But if Luis Roberts out, if Luis Roberts out for any length of time, and Eli Jimenez looked good this spring, although who knows, it's just the spring, but he's out now too. Where is this team getting wins outside of Garrett Crochet throwing 9 innings and shutting the other team out? And even then, it might just be 0-0 going to the 10th. And that's, like you said, that's just simply not going to happen for 30 starts. So yeah, this team's really bad.
Yep.
Oh, all right. Why don't you lead us off with your AL West order?
Yep. So I've got the world champion Texas Rangers. Thanks, Captain Obvious, taking this division. Although I do think it's going to be close. Obviously, the Astros are a pretty strong team. So I've got those 2, 1 and 2. I think the Mariners have a lot of nice elements, and they're kind of right in the middle in this division. They don't have enough to compete with either of the Texas teams. And then you got the Angels, which are also a horribly run franchise, but they look great next to the Athletics, which is a whole different story. So that's the order for me.
Yeah, I've got the Rangers winning the division as well. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I actually have the Mariners finishing second. And I'll talk more about why, as we get into our little blurbs. Astros third. And the final, we'll talk about our playoff teams here in a minute, but they're my final wild card team, giving a little teaser away. Angels, again, finishing fourth, like you said. They're such a poorly run team that Artie Moreno can even screw up the sale of the team. Like, that's, how do you even do that? I don't know. Anybody did it. And then I have Sacramento finishing fifth. So, Oakland. So yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. But whatever, Las Vegas, whatever the hell they
Yeah.
are.
Who
So
knows?
they're a fascinating case. They could literally be playing in any city in 5 years from now, and other than Oakland. Actually, I wouldn't even say that. It could be Oakland. Who knows? So,
Really? Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So all right, enough about that damn team. Talk about the Rangers.
Lineup is elite. Even without Young, I think they don't miss a beat, which is saying something because he's a great player. The rotation is a little light right now, but I think you have enough with that offense, and then I think you get some of these guys back towards the end of the year. Although that's really a wild card, but they have a bunch of guys that could come back, contribute after the All-Star break. Over the course of the season, I don't think they're going to put up as many wins as the Orioles, but I think they do have enough to win this division.
Totally agree. I'm always a sucker for defending champs, both fantasy and real life. So I will give the benefit of the doubt to the defending champs, and they are, granted, larger market, but still, they are kind of the antithesis to your Guardians rip. Where the ownership has clearly shown not just a willingness, but a propensity to spend money to bolster the roster. They have off to a good start. They're going to get Max Scherzer back at some point, and they're going to get maybe even Jacob deGrom. Maybe he comes out of the bullpen. It's like a fireman type. Gives you an inning here and there, whatever. So yeah, you look up and down this lineup and you just don't really see a lot of weaknesses. And that's, obviously the health, I guess, maybe with Josh Young being hurt again, Corey Seager being hurt again, whatever. But they're just so damn good. And they've got not a great farm system, but a good enough farm system to bolster whatever they need, halfway through the year. I just don't see any way they don't win the division, frankly. You want to go with your Astros next, or you want to go with the Mariners?
Yeah. So, I do think it'll be close. I think the Astros have a lot of talent. I actually see a lot of parallels between these two Texas teams. They both have a stacked lineup, a little bit of a thin rotation right now. But the Astros, again, also have guys that should be coming back. We'll see. But, Verlander should be coming back sooner than later, probably. And even if it's not the Verlander of old, I think you get a solid performance out of him. But I think the Rangers have a little bit of an edge. For me, they've got a better bullpen. They've got a little bit more depth, a little bit more defense.
Yep, fair enough. So I've got the Astros finishing third, like we talked about, and we'll chat a little bit about that or whatever about the Mariners here in a second. But they're off to a poor start. Which, it's only 10 games, but as my friend Jeff Bruckelbaum likes to say, the losses don't come off the record. Once they're there, they're for good. And I kind of said, is this the year that the dynasty ends? Bregman's he's 30 years old now. Tuve's getting up there in years. Jose Abreu looks like he's about 100 years old. Jordan Alvarez is off to a slow start. They don't have the pitching that they've had in years past. No, this is not the year the dynasty ends. They get the last wild card. But anyway, that was my take on the Astros. Why don't you talk about the Mariners, Sam?
Yep. So the Mariners, for me, is led by stacked starting rotation. I think it could be the best rotation 1 through 5 in the league. Probably is. For me, the hitting is just a little bit light. I think they'll really have to outperform their run differential if they're going to get to 90 wins, and I think that's what it's going to take to be second in this division. So I have them third. I have them right about 85, 86 win type season.
Yep, that's fair. That's you and I. You may as well have written my little blurb on the Mariners. I say they throw a starter every day who can shut you down, but their offense is really lacking. If you listen to our fantasy outfield fades, I had Julio Rodriguez as a fade inside the top first round. If Julio Rodriguez isn't, he doesn't have to be 1,000 OPS player, but let's say a 900 OPS player. Where is this team getting runs? There's just so many holes up and down this lineup. JP Crawford's a nice enough. Really though,
Crawford's solid.
JP Crawford,
right? But he's not. He's not driving. Yeah, he's not driving.
Right. If we're talking JP Crawford and Cal Raleigh as your second and third best offensive players, you have problems. So, 1 to 5, I don't think there's any question. This is the best rotation, if not in baseball, certainly in the American League. They put a starter on the bump every day who's going to potentially give you a shutout. They're that good.
Yeah.
So, So, all right, let's go to the Angels. I'll lead off this one if that's all right. I actually think that they are a little bit similar to the Red Sox insofar, not in terms of shape, not in terms of pitching and defense, but just in terms of they're going to finish maybe just shy of 500, and that's kind of a successful season for them. I think their pitching's better than it has been in years recent. I think your boy Mike Trout stays healthy this year and puts up a good season, and that leads them to 78 wins, and everybody's disappointed that Mike Trout misses the playoffs again.
Well, that would do it. I'm not counting on that. I think we've covered that a little bit in some of our earlier episodes.
Yep.
When I look at the Angels, I do see a team that has some interesting pieces, but what I was kind of looking at, the perspective I was taking is this is mostly the same roster from last season, and that team only got to 73 wins, and they lost Ohtani and about 10 wins of a replacement there. So it's going to be tough, I think, even to get back to that number. I do like some of the younger hitters or youngish hitters.
You don't think Nolan Schanuel is going to make up that 10 wins?
I was just bringing that up. I don't think he's going to make up 10 wins. I think he's part of a group that I think could do better than they did last year, or not that he played a lot last year, but I think he could have a positive impact on the team, but I'm certainly not counting on him for anything close to double-digit wins. I do also like some of the pitching. I think, Canning or Silseth or Detmers, some of those guys could have a better year than they did last year. But even if all that does take place, you're still, again, I think, struggling to get back to the 73 wins that they put up last year.
Yeah, short of Mike Trout putting up his career year, which is, for Mike Trout, that would be like a 12-win season. There's just no way this team makes the playoffs. It's just not happening. All right. I'm going to lead into. I'm going to segue to Sacramento, to Oakland, to Vegas, to Nashville, to Salt Lake City. I don't know where the hell these teams going to be playing. Anyway, whatever. And this team should be John Fisher, the owner of the A's, should be thanking his lucky stars for the White Sox, because if the White Sox didn't exist, we would be talking to them as an all-time terrible team. I think. I don't think they're a 50-win team. I think that they have enough talent both in the lineup and in the rotation to avoid being an all-time bad team, but they're probably more likely to lose 95 games than they are to win 70.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they're going to be in that 50-win range, and for me, this is a horrible drop-off from a franchise that was doing what I would call Rays type of things before the Rays made it popular. Instead of trying to be, okay, you're a smaller market team, you're not going to have the payroll. Instead of trying to work around, market inefficiencies or whatever, there's really almost no direction from ownership and management other than trying to finagle a new stadium out of somebody. That's been as far as I can see from the outside looking in, the sole focus of this team, the baseball operations of this team for the last however many number of years. The stadium situation is embarrassing. Playing in a minor league stadium is embarrassing. This team somehow has only about half the payroll of the next lowest team in the league. Right. It's just a joke. Speaking of not trying to compete, so they've kind of fallen into by they say a broken clock is wrong twice a day. Couple interesting pieces. I think Geloff is really could be a very good hitter. You got a couple guys on the pitching side. Obviously, like Mason Miller a lot, whatever role he's in, if he can stay healthy. But other than that, there's not much to talk about. Shout out to Keith Law. They rank last in his farm system ratings as well. So there's not even a lot or much of anything on the way. Yep. So it's just a bad situation for the players, and I don't know where, what are you looking at? If I'm jumping ship from the Guardians, what are A's fans doing? I don't know.
Right. Yeah, no, totally agree. So, all right, let's talk about our playoff teams real quick. So we've got, obviously, the Orioles, we agree on winning the East, the Rangers winning the West. We both agree on those. Yep. You've got the Twins winning the Central. I've got the Royals winning the Central. So those are mutually exclusive picks. I don't think either one of us has anybody else from the Central making the playoffs. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, cool. So then let's talk about our wild card teams. Then who you got for your 3 wild cards?
So I've got the Astros, and
Mhm.
then I've got 2 AL East teams. Again, I think that's going to be an interesting division to keep an eye on as the season goes on. I have the Red Sox getting in, and I have the Rays just barely sneaking in over the Mariners.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so I've got, not surprisingly, my Yankees making the playoffs. I said I think they're going to be around a 88 to 90 win team this year. And then again, the Mariners finishing second in the AL West would likely warrant a wild card spot. And as I mentioned during my Astros talk, I think they finish as the last wild card team, and probably are the proverbial team that nobody wants to face in the playoffs. So, all right.
If they can get in, with that rotation, that'd be fun.
Right. So, all right, now let's segue into some end of season awards that ultimately are largely meaningless, but are always fun to talk about. Why don't you talk about your AL Rookie of the Year, bud?
Yep. So I think there's a lot of interesting candidates for this year. I have Wyatt Langford taking the award at the end of the year.
Okay. Yep. Wyatt Langford's a common and often cited pick, and obviously had a ridiculous spring and a ridiculous collegiate career, and minor league record was incredible last year, and lots of reasons to like him, which is why I'm picking his teammate Evan Carter. My Evan Carter love is well known in these parts. I think Evan Carter. So this, let's be clear, this is a real baseball preview, not a fantasy baseball preview this episode. Evan Carter, for his entire career, will be a better real baseball player than he will be a fantasy baseball player. But I see Evan Carter as being like a 5-6 win player this year. And because his speed, his defense, I think he's going to hit like 50 doubles. I absolutely love that guy. If he can hit lefties even a little bit, he's going to be one of the better players in the American League, period. So anyway, so that's my pick for Rookie of the Year. So you want to talk about your Cy Young winner?
I do. I'm taking Tarek Skubal. I think he's legit. I think what he did second half of last year he's gonna do this year. And I think the Tigers are a better team, so that he'll get that consideration for the Cy Young, because you got to be in contention still, despite our advancements in analytics.
Right. Yeah. No doubt.
So I have him taking that over some interesting candidates also.
Like who?
I got Cole Reagans in the mix. I got Logan Gilbert, and I got George Kirby. Those are my top 4.
Gotcha. Interesting. All right. So
Cole would obviously be there, but
yeah, that's funny. Well, perfect segue. Actually, I was talking to our friend Sean Fenty before the episode about the American League Cy Young and who he would pick, and he ran through a lot of the same candidates that you ran through. But the presumptive favorite would have been Garrett Cole if he were healthy. I mean, he would have been like almost like a negative odds player in Vegas, right? Because I mean, who else are you going to pick? But my pick is Grayson Rodriguez. I think the Orioles, the Orioles are going to win that division handily. I think they could push 100 wins, and I think he's going to be their best starter. Yes, even above Corbin Burns. And so I think he's going to have the kind of the quote unquote traditional stats. I think he could push 20 wins this year. And then I think his underlying stats are going to be, I mean, he's just so damn good. I don't know if you've watched him pitch. If you haven't watched him pitch, do yourself a favor. I don't know when he's starting this week. Go watch him pitch that night. It'll be the most fun you've had with baseball all week. So, all right, how about your MVP?
Showing the Yankees a little bit of love here. I've got Juan Soto taking the MVP. I think everything's lined up for him to have a career year to this point. Maybe outside of 20 is going to be tough on a rate stat basis, but I think he puts up the numbers this year, and he's the MVP. I do like Gunnar Henderson a little bit for the same reason. I think he's going to take a step forward from even where he was last year. But I think ultimately Soto takes it.
Nice. Okay, I'll take it. That would be 2 out of 3 years the Yankees taking home the MVP. So, with a Cy Young sandwiched in between, and
not bad,
and no World Series appearances. Anyway, so I've got Mike Trout finishing second, to Bobby Witt Jr. Witt Jr. made amazing. I mean, he was almost a 30-50 player last year. And, but for Ronald Acuna, we would all be talking about that. And then his defense suddenly he turned into a plus defender last year. So if my Royals pick to win the Central comes true, I'm a big narrative guy. I like the idea of, the one following the other. Voters are going to, I think Trout, this is going to be the classic, like Miguel Cabrera winning the Triple Crown over Mike Trout, like clearly beating him in WAR year. Like kind of similar to that. Mike Trout's going to put up a bigger, wins above replacement, but Bobby Witt's going to win it because the Royals make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right. And who's taking the pennant?
I like it. So for me, it's the Rangers. That's no dark horse here or bold predictions. I don't think anybody's got enough to overcome them. Obviously, on paper, Baltimore, I think, certainly does. I don't think they have the experience to outlast them in a series. And I think, especially if you do end up getting back DeGrom and Scherzer in some form, whether they're following an opener or whatever is happening, they can give you a few innings here and there.
You use those guys even as tandem starters almost.
Yeah, anything like that. I think that's going to be really tough to overcome.
Yep. So I got the Rangers as well. So we actually, for once, are in agreement on something, except for the Orioles, I guess. But yeah, the Rangers are, they're just a mean looking team. The investment, they show you what investing in your roster can do. Right, they invested in Corey Seager, they invested in Marcus Semien. That's right. They went out and they extended. Everybody forgets this, but they extended Adolis Garcia. They signed Nathaniel Lowe to a contract. Whatever. Bottom line is they draft well, they develop well. They're not a stacked minor league system, but they're a good minor league system. This is just a really damn good team. It's just that simple. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Orioles beat them, if even the Astros beat them, if Garrett Cole comes back healthy, if the Yankees beat them. But if I got to put my money on one team, I'm putting it on the Rangers. So, all right. So that's all we've got for today. Our plan is to record the National League preview this coming Wednesday. So we hope you join us for that episode as well. We appreciate everybody's viewership. Please like and subscribe and follow us on Twitter at 2guys1roto. Appreciate your time. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening again.